Have you ever thought about studying abroad but wondered if the experience would be worth it? Does the idea of traveling the world as a student and studying in a country you know probably so little about excites you but still stresses you out? Well, trust me, you're not alone. Studying abroad is usually a very stressful idea that most students consider, especially when they're trying to apply for universities. These days, there's almost 5 million students who study outside of their home country, which shows how much of a common thing it is to do now. And considering that you clicked on this video means that this idea has probably crossed your mind at least more than once. But trust me, I understand how stressful it is. I have been in your place and had all these questions in my head before as well. And that is exactly why I'm making this video right now. I have been studying dentistry in Ukraine for 4 years now, and ever since I traveled to study abroad, I had a lot of questions from my friends and people who watch these videos about what's it like to study abroad. And even though this is a very broad topic and there's so much that could be said about it, I will try to condense all the important things in this video, and hopefully it'll help you clear things up and make up your mind on what fits you best. So, to start things up, the video will be split into advantages, disadvantages, and the overall experience. But before I start everything, I would like to note that this is all my personal thoughts and opinions on studying abroad. In your situation, for example, this could be completely different. I have no idea, I have no control of what happens in your experience of studying abroad, but I did try my best to generalize everything that I'm going to be sharing with you so that whoever is studying abroad can relate to at least 90% of what I'm going to say. And yeah, that should be it, and I just thought I'd let you know before starting this video and talking about all these things. But now let's get into the advantages. To be honest, studying abroad has so many advantages. Not only you'll get to study in a different country, but you'll get to live an experience that will completely change your life. Some of these advantages are learning about different cultures. I'm pretty sure you already know that when you travel to a different country, you will start to get familiar with their culture and probably start to learn about it more. However, what most people forget is that you're not the only person who is traveling to study in that country or in that specific university. Most probably you will get to meet a lot of international students who came from all over the world. So not only you will get to learn about the culture of the country that you're going to, but when you make friends, you'll get to learn about their culture as well. Which means that you'll get to be familiar with different cultures from all over the world, which is really nice because culture and traditions are generally a nice thing to learn about, and it's really interesting to talk to people about their culture and things that they usually do in their country, but also makes you a more interesting person because you know a lot about different cultures. So to me, I consider this a huge advantage to anyone who is considering studying abroad, and I'm really grateful for it. Secondly, learning a new language. Now, if you're going to a country where they speak the same language as yours, then this advantage is probably disqualified for you. However, generally speaking, most students consider going to countries where they speak a language different than theirs. So in that case, you will get the opportunity of learning that language. But one thing you need to note is that learning the language isn't something that's gonna just happen by itself. You do have to meet people who speak that language and start to talk with them and have conversations. I personally haven't learned the Russian language or the Ukrainian one fully. I know how to read, write, and say all the numbers because I tried to learn them online. But the fact that I study in English in the university and the fact that most of my friends are international students as well, I'm most likely speaking in English or in Arabic to them the whole time, which means that I don't really practice my Russian or Ukrainian, and that is why I haven't been learning it. And if you do the same thing, then you won't learn it. But if I do decide to learn that language and give it enough time so that I can learn how to have full-on conversations with people, then the fact that I live in a country where almost everyone speaks that specific language is actually a huge advantage, because all I have to do is just give it enough time, try to learn it as much as I can, and go out and try to have conversations with people or just meet friends who speak that language, and I can communicate with them in that language so that I can learn it from them a little bit more. Third on the list is learning new skills. The fact that you're going to be traveling and living on your own will teach you a lot of new things. I know that probably some of you already do a lot of chores at the house and you think that you know how to clean and cook and do everything that you're already doing, but trust me, when you go and live completely on your own, it'll be completely different. The amount of work that you will have to do, the amount of things that you need to learn is more than what you've ever done in your life, and not in a bad way, to be honest, because learning these new skills is really nice and it's really good for you. For example, cooking. When I came to Ukraine, I really didn't know how to cook anything before, so I was completely new to the game. I was always on my phone calling my mother, asking her for new recipes or searching YouTube for new recipes and how to do this and that. And now I'm at a place where I can comfortably say that I can cook a lot of good dishes. In fact, whenever my friends come over and I do cook for them, they do enjoy my food. And not only that, but also my mother have been asking me for recipes sometimes. The moment that your mother asks you for recipes instead of you asking her is actually when you realize that you have made it. And to be honest, this is one of the things that I'm really proud of. I take pride in it. And not only cooking, you'll get to learn a lot more skills in the house, like cleaning, organizing, and doing a lot of different things. But also outside of the house, you will get to learn a new sport, probably learn a new instrument or whatever it is that you feel like doing, because the fact that you're living on your own and in this completely different country, meeting new people will actually motivate you to do the things that you like to do. Which brings us to number 4, and it is becoming an independent person. So living on your own in a completely different country for the first time isn't something that is easy. I know that you probably think it is. I thought the same thing before traveling here, and it wasn't the case. I mean, it's not to a point where you can't do it. Obviously you can. But what I'm trying to say is that there were more things that I didn't expect I would have to go through, and I expected things to be much easier. I thought cooking was easy. I thought organizing my apartment was easy. I thought being on my own was something that is easy, and to be honest, they weren't, because I was living with my parents who used to take care of all these things without me realizing how hard they are. I didn't really appreciate or understand how hard it is to do all these things until I came here and I had to try it firsthand. So I was actually really grateful and really appreciative of all the efforts that my parents did in the years, and it did take me a little bit of time for me to get used to all these things, but now I feel comfortable doing any of these tasks. I'm so used to it. It's something that is very easy right now, but it wasn't at the time of me coming here. And that is what I'm trying to say, that when you first come here, being an independent person will probably be harder than you thought it would be, but then with time, the more you stay, the more you do these things, the more you learn about them, the more easier they become, and the more easier it is for you to be an independent person. And in my opinion, this is a huge advantage. I feel like everyone should learn how to be capable of doing all these things on their own, because it is something that is good for you and your future in the long run. Now, last but not least is that you will have a better resume. This is something that not a lot of people consider, and that is when you go to apply to a job and you take your resume with you, a lot of the people who will be interviewing you, or like your employer, they will really appreciate the fact that you studied abroad. Because of all the advantages that I mentioned before, a lot of them will appreciate the fact that you have lived on your own, the fact that you have learned many skills through this experience, the fact that you have learned about different cultures, the fact that you have met a lot of people, the fact that you have been put in a situation where you need to be independent and it is stressful and you still manage to come out of it, is actually a huge advantage for you, and it does impress a lot of people, and they do take it into consideration when you're applying. Now, it is not something that would just give you the job. Obviously, you need to have all the qualifications, but let's say in a scenario where you have your application and someone else's application, and your grades are similar, your qualifications are similar, but you have this extra point that is the fact that you studied abroad and have lived throughout this experience that is now a part of you and has shaped you. And in that case, when both of you are probably as qualified for having this job, but you have this extra thing, it will probably give you the upper hand and give you the job. So yeah, don't only think that you're the only person who is appreciating what you have went through and appreciating what you have learned throughout this experience. Other people will appreciate it as well, especially these days when a lot of the job offers and a lot of the companies are looking for people who have really good communication skills and all these things as well. So it is a good advantage. Now for the disadvantages. Even though studying abroad is exciting and fun, there are a couple of disadvantages to note, such as the culture shock. Now, I know that I previously said that learning about new cultures is actually one of the advantages, but some people, when they first come to a different country, especially if they are from a completely different background, the difference in cultures will actually shock them at the beginning, and it won't be an easy of a transition for them to get used to the new lifestyle. So that's why some people might consider this as a disadvantage. Now, personally, in my own experience, I didn't go through that. Maybe because I spend a lot of time on the internet, because these days you can just learn anything that you want on the internet. The fact that you have an open access to the whole world just in your phone actually really helps these days in reducing stuff like this. I don't think it is that common for people to have culture shock, but it is there. and it does happen sometimes, and that is why I left it in the disadvantages section. But let's be honest, I think every single person these days just spends a lot of time on their phone and on social media, and they're probably somehow familiar with different lifestyles around the world. So I don't think this will continue to be a disadvantage. I think most people will just get used to it, but it is for now, and that is why I'm leaving it in that section. The second is language barrier. And again, if you are studying in a country where they speak the same language as you, or they are familiar with the language that you speak, then this disadvantage is disqualified. But if you're like me and you decide to study in a country where probably 90% of the people don't speak English, then it is a problem, because you will need to communicate with people, and if you don't know the language, then you can't communicate with anyone, not in the market, not in the streets, not anywhere. And I mean, most of the situations are fine, like you don't need to communicate with people who don't speak English, but some of them are important and you do need to. The way I get away with it is by having a lot of friends who are also international students that can speak English and Russian at the same time. So they did help me in a lot of the situations where knowing Russian language is actually important. And to be honest, like I said before, I am familiar with the language. I just can't have full-on conversations with people, but for most of the things that I need, I can get away with them. And that's how I've been living so far. So yeah, take into consideration that if you're going to a country where you don't know their language and they don't know the language that you speak, that you will need to somehow get away with things, and you will probably have to learn it or meet people who can speak it and help you with most of the things that you need. Third is expenses. So studying abroad isn't cheap. You will have to pay for flights, you will have to pay for rent, you will have to pay for your living expenses, and on top of that, your tuition fees, and they could add up quickly. Now, in my personal case, this was an advantage, like expenses, because it costs more to study dentistry in my country than it costs here to study dentistry, plus all my living expenses. So it was an advantage to me, but I know that this is only my situation. It could be completely different for you. If I was to choose to study anywhere in Europe or America, let's say, or Canada, then it would have been a much more expensive situation. So that's why this is in the disadvantages, because generally speaking, living and studying abroad is something that is expensive. So I hope you take that into consideration. Fourth is family and friends, and I think that this is very obvious. The fact that you're traveling and leaving all your family and friends will make you miss them, and to be honest, this is something that doesn't get better with time. I feel like it only gets worse. I mean, sure, you get used to living on your own, sure, you get used to like being independent and having to travel every now and then, but that feeling of missing them, especially when you go back to your country and then you have to travel to where you are studying, that feeling hurts sometimes, and it doesn't get better with time, so you will just have to get used to it. And yeah, it is a disadvantage, it does happen, but what can I say? Life happens. Last but not least is the risk of studying abroad. Now, this is something that a lot of people consider it to be important, and it is probably the deal breaker for them, which is the fact that they're risking their lives or risking their time and their money to like travel abroad. Because what if, let's say, you traveled and you started studying abroad, and after 1 year or 2 years or 3 years, you figure out that you don't enjoy studying in that country, or you don't enjoy studying this major or whatever it is, or in general that the whole experience wasn't just good for you, and you decide to just drop out. That is a huge risk, because a lot of people will consider it a waste of time and a waste of money, and they are right, to be honest. And this is a risk, but I feel like it is only a disadvantage if you had a bad experience, because like I said, this is a risk, so it could go wrong, but it could go right at the same time. And if it did go right, then this could be a huge advantage and not a disadvantage. So yeah, this is something that comes with it, and this is something that is a deal breaker for a lot of people, just the waste of their time and energy and money especially. So yeah, you need to take it into consideration, and a lot of people do as well, but like I said, it could be an advantage in the end. So as an overall experience, my opinion, studying abroad is so worth it. Like I said before, it is much more than traveling and studying in a different country. It'll be an experience that will be a part of you and will completely change you and change your whole life and change who you are. You will learn so many new things and will get the chance of having a lot of new opportunities in your life. Because if you really think about it, there's different kind of opportunities all over the world, and you already have dipped your toes in the ones that are already in your country. So why not just go and see what the world has to offer for you? But now, if you're sure that this is something that is not for you and you don't feel like doing it, then definitely do not do that. Go with what your heart says. But if you're torn up on making a decision between like either to travel or not to travel, I'd say that you are still young. You have so many years ahead of you. You have so much time. There's no harm in like maybe trying it for 1 year and then seeing if it was something that fits you or not. A lot of people like to do that. I think it's worth it, to be honest. And if it worked out, then you can just continue doing it. And if not, then at least you know that you tried. But this is like if you are really torn up on the decision. If you know what you want, then definitely do what you want to do. But no matter what happens, let this be your own decision. Think of this thoroughly and decide for yourself if you want to do this or not. Some people just don't like to study abroad or travel to a different country and live there for a lot of years. So I can't really make the decision for you, and no one else can make the decision for you. But the most that I can do is share with you my experience, share with you my thoughts and opinions on studying abroad, which again could be different for you depending on your situation, but hopefully it gives you a better idea of how things generally are and makes the decision-making process easier for you. With that being said, thank you for watching this video. If you enjoyed it or got something out of it, then please leave a like, subscribe, watch more videos like this in the future. And if you know someone who is thinking of traveling and studying abroad, then consider sharing this video with them in hopes that they might get something out of it as well. And yeah, thank you, and I hope to see you next time.